A warm welcome to you and thank you very much for joining us on the program. The remains of ISIS leader and founder Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi were disposed at sea after he died during the U.S. military raids that targeted his compound in northwest Syria over the weekend. U.S. authorities would, however, not reveal details about which body of water it took place, but the procedure is believed to be similar to that the one used to dispose of the remains of al-Qaeda founder Osama bin Laden. Also, two men captured during the U.S. military's raid on Islamic State IS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's hideout in Syria and are now in the U.S. custody, says the Pentagon. Now, reactions have continued to pour in after the news of the founder of the world's #1 deadly terror groups, after the news of his death. But the question on the minds of many is the world now a safer place? And indeed, for us this morning, this is the question we will be trying to address. Will Africa be safer now that Abu Baghdadi is dead? Ruth.
Yes, Jerry, the announcement of the death of the head of the Islamic State group, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, has provoked reactions in countries such as Mali. Mali jihadists have made allegiance to the Islamic State group, and it is the Islamic State in the Great Sahara, one of the branches of the al-Marbitun, has mourned hundreds of families. According to experts, this death will not change much, since this branch of the Islamic State in the Sahel is completely independent of the one operating in Syria or Iraq. Burkina Faso was again the target of a terrorist attack this weekend. What does our expert think? Is there a chance that ISIL will weaken in the continent?
L'État islamique s'affaiblit sur notre continent. Écoutez ces réponses avec vous.
Thank you very much. Raoul Sumotaya is a fellow at the University of Lausanne, Switzerland, and he is with us now. Thank you very much for joining us. A pleasure to have you with us this morning. So it's all over the news, and the reactions have continued. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. Now, what does his death mean for Africa and the jihadist movements across the continent that are linked to the Islamic State?
In general, these African movements enjoy relative autonomy and at most benefit from financial assistance from either the Islamic State or al-Qaeda. So I think the rallying process is more symbolic than anything else. That is why, undoubtedly, I believe that the death of Baghdadi will have no impact on African jihadist movements. The causes that lead to the emergence of these movements are totally different, and the use of political Islam is merely the ideological packaging of local insurrections. The reasons that led Boko Haram to emerge in Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, and Chad, for example, are much more endogenous, and it is only in secondary way that the link between these movements and the Islamic State can be highlighted. I don't think the death of Baghdadi will change much, because somehow in the next few days, most likely, the Islamic State will appoint a new leader, and of course the connections will recover somehow.
L'État islamique va désigner un nouveau dirigeant et naturellement les contacts vont être renoués d'une manière ou d'une autre.
According to your analysis, the different jihadist groups that are funded by ISIL will not be financially shaken after the death of the group leader? Yes, in one way or another, these funds were linked to the institution rather than to the individual. You see, movements such as the Islamic State are not structured according to the self-centered principles with a strong point. For example, who would be the leader and whose destruction would lead to the destruction of the movement? This type of movement has multiple centers of attraction. Bin Laden's death did not lead to the fall of al-Qaeda. It is clear that today, with the death of Baghdadi, we will observe the same logic. He will be replaced in the coming days. The financing circuits will certainly remain. I think they were more linked to the institution than to the very individual who was at the head of the Islamic State.
So how then can this funding be stopped? How can we cut funding to this group?
To dismantle the international financing circuits for these movements, i.e. to make a kind of tracking of financial flows from certain countries, to monitor the financial movements of non-profit organizations, particularly those that are more or less directly related, and that receive money from monarchies most of the time under the pretext of financing charities on African territory, when in reality it is to finance terrorism. So we must monitor these flows, especially the fundamental movements of Islamic NGOs. But it should not be forgotten that most of these movements have endogenous financing mechanisms. A movement like Boko Haram, for example, was financed from bank robberies, then financed from selling of fish. In short, a set of strategies that contribute to the resilience of these groups. So I think we should not overestimate the weight of international financial flows, but to take them into account while also acting on domestic sources of financing.
Sur les sources de financement internes.